Hey guys, welcome back to 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons book review, and we're going to be doing the last book today of the core rule books, and that would be Monster Manual. Now, what is the Monster Manual for, and why didn't I talk about it before? Why is this all a core rule book? First off, I didn't talk about it first or second because I don't necessarily think it's the most important book. I think it's right up there. It's one of the 3 core rule books you need for a crazy campaign. Lots of times you can just use your imagination and you don't need monsters to make a successful adventure. You can do a completely city adventure and just use humanoids or human type creatures, which you can make up out of the player's handbook. The Monster Manual is really for those people that are making their world, that are really into customizing it with their own and need some extra flair. And so that's where the Monster Manual comes into play. Dungeon Masters should absolutely have it if you're running pretty much any kind of campaign, because it's a great reference to go back to and look up and see what the abilities are of the critters that you're putting against your people and your players and whatnot. In the Monster Manual, this book is fairly straightforward. It talks about monsters and it talks about their abilities, their scores, their treasures, their lairs, if they have lairs. It talks about their behaviors, where they find them, whether it's in the Underdark, towns and cities underwater, etc., etc. This book covers a lot of that. Now, does it cover all the monsters in the mythos? No, not even close. This book covers a lot. And it covers a lot of base type of monsters and different things. You know, it covers things from aberrations, beasts, celestials, constructs, dragons, elementals, fae, fiends, giants, humanoids, monstrosities. Covers oozes, plants, and undead. And that covers a whole lot of territory, let me tell you. It goes over everything you need to know about the monster. Its abilities, its size, its colors, you know, the shapes. It generally has fantastic pictures of the monsters, the XPs. It's a bit, you know, monsters get legendary abilities. Some of them do. It tells you all that in this book. Of course, like every other book, this book is alphabetized, and or not like every other book, but like the player's handbook, this book is alphabetized. Every monster in it is listed from A to Z. And that's from pages like 12 to, well, let's see here. I'll be more exact. Pages, pages 12 to pages 316. So it is a nice little chunk of pages full of pretty much a whole pile of critters you could think of and a few that you didn't think of. And it goes into some really awesome detail on pretty much all of them. And so I would definitely read this book, or at least read the monsters that you're going to be putting in your campaign for your players, because it'll make the campaign have more color, more not color, well, color, yes, but more flavor, I guess is what I'm looking for. And it'll give you more ideas of what a Carrion Crawler would, you know, where it would exist, you know. They give you really great adjectives too. Like, I'll read this a little bit for you. The Carrion Crawlers scour putrid flesh from carcasses and gobble slimy bones that remain. They aggressively attack any creature that trespasses on their territory or disturbs their feasting. Like, that is some sick adjectives used. If I'm the DM and I start talking like that and I start using adjectives that are fantastic like that, my players are going to get more into the campaign. They're gonna like, you know, if you're like, oh, there's this, and if you describe it, you know, there's this like giant caterpillar worm thing with a giant mouthful of teeth and tentacles coming off it, giant buggy eyes, bug-like eyes. And it's scouring around eating the flesh off of bones and stuff. You know, it gets the player a little more interested. It gives a little more flavor to the story. And in this case, the Carrion Crawler, like I said, it aggressively defends his territory and does not like being disturbed and will attack anybody. I'll read some more. The Carrion Crawler follows the scent of death to its food. but it prefers not to compete with other scavengers. So, you know, if it comes across, say, something else, you know, a pile of goblins, it might just move on. They hunker down in territories where death is plentiful, and other carrion eaters have limited mobility. Caves, sewers, dungeons, forests, and marshes are their favorite lairs, but carrion crawlers are also drawn to battlefields and cemeteries. So you got some nice, interesting twists. I'm not going to read it all. I'm just giving you an idea of what this book does. Again, here we'll go over the quick. It goes over its armor class, hit points, and its speed. It climb in 30 and crawl at 30. It goes over all of its statistics. You know, perception, dark vision. Keen. It has some feats. It's got keen smell and spider climb, which are part of its abilities and feats. Actions. It's got multi attacks, so it can make 2 attacks. Tentacles and then bite are its 2 types. And it just goes over this stuff. And this book is so good for this. And you know, I really don't want to get into every type of monster. We do have a lore video series going on about different monsters and their abilities, and we're not talking specifically about their like statistics, you know, like their hit points and their stats, but we're talking about their environments, their uses for a dungeon master and whatnot. I would check them out. So yeah, the book is full of just piles of stuff. Lizard folk, lycanthropes, medusas, modrons. You should check that out if you want to know what they are. Nagas, oozes, orcs. Speaking of that, I'll go over a little bit on the orcs. It goes over not just orcs, but it gives you an orc chief. It gives you orc eye of Grummish and all that good stuff. So it gives you different types of orcs too. Oitjugs, owl bears, which are really interesting. One of my favorites, the rust monster. You really want to scare a group full of armor wearers. Throw a little rust monster out at them. I won't tell you what they do, but you can kind of guess. And if you want to know more, get the book and read up on it. Or watch the video that we're going to do. Back of the book, it has something. The one other person other than the Dungeon Master would maybe want this book would be Appendix A, and that would be for Druids or Rangers. Mostly Druids or people who can summon monsters. Sometimes some spellcasters can do that, but Druids specifically, because they can shapeshift, is miscellaneous creatures, and mostly it's beasts in the back of the book. Appendix A is mostly beasts, and this way the Druid doesn't have to cycle through 300, 400 pages of monsters to find the beasts. This book has beasts are everything from like what you would think of like bears and wolves and dogs and cats and birds and things like that. They're the typical critters that could exist in, say, like real life. Not everything, obviously, but things that could. They're not really fantasy style creatures. And so a druid could potentially need the monster manual just to have access to the beasts in the back of the book. Now the player's handbook, if you watch that video, I talked a little bit about that. In the back of that book they have beasts also, but this, in the monster manual, Appendix A goes over a lot of pages worth of beasts. It expands upon the player's handbook by a lot, so don't be afraid if you're a druid or you want to play a druid that you go ahead and pick up a copy of this book, as long as your GM's okay with it. And you can use the beast out of the back of the book. So yeah, that's a good thing. It talks about a lot of stuff in there. The other thing that is back in this book is Appendix B, which is non-player characters, or NPCs they're called. This also lists a lot of generic NPCs. So you want to say an archmage. Well, this book kind of gives you an idea what an archmage's stats and skills would be. If you want a bunch of bandits, well, this book lists bandits too. It also tells you about the bandit captain, tells you about cultists, scouts, spies, etc., etc., etc. Anyhow, and of course, the last thing in the book is the index. Of course, in every book, there's always the index at the end, at least in the core rulebooks of Dungeons & Dragons so far, 5th edition. Anyway, I hope you liked this video. I hope that it gives you an idea of what's in this book, and I hope I didn't ramble too much for you. I want to give you enough information so you could decide whether this book was going to be a worthwhile purchase for you or not, and decide whether or not, if you're a DM, that you wanted this book. I would hope that after listening to this, if you're a DM, you want this book, because it's really important that you do. And if you're a player that's running a caster that summons monsters or beasts specifically, or something that can summon druids are really the one that comes to my mind for shape-shifting and stuff. This book contains pretty much anything a druid can shape-shift into, and that's pretty awesome. So anyway, if you like this video, subscribe, hit the thumbs up, and until next time, my name's Scott. You can call me Guff. Signing off.